Kabula Vinaka, Kia ora, Namaste, Nwai Maori. It's a pleasure and honor to be here this evening. My wife did a PhD from Otago, so she spent a number of years in New Zealand. My two children went to high school and did the undergraduate and postgraduate in New Zealand. So New Zealand in many ways has become part of my family. But more importantly, I have so many friends. Professor David Roby, from the former University of the South Pacific, head of journalism, and many familiar friends here. I know I don't want to name all of them. Rachel is right, I was invited to speak at the annual Rutuman Day, or Rutuma Day. And one of the things that I said at that meeting was how communities make up our society, how communities make up a nation. And invariably, merging interest of different communities, creating social cohesion, builds up a country. Sometimes we tend to undervalue the importance of diversity, the importance of communities, the importance of language, importance of how different communities do things, as part of the culture, tradition, language, and heritage. And countries which understand that as part of the democratic culture do better economically. And that's the evidence around the world, with some exceptions here and there. I feel very honored to be with all of you. I know that for now Community Hub is a center which brings different communities. I know you have the New Zealand Rutuman Community Center, and I understand there will be inauguration of the Fiji Center today. These are initiatives that build communities. My own philosophy over so many years has been deeply rooted in the fact that governments cannot do everything. Governments sometimes don't do things better. Communities outside of government, organizations outside of government, and I believe there is a lot of knowledge and wisdom that resides outside of government bureaucracy, resides outside of the ambit of politicians, and governments which choose not to work with communities and empower them and learn from their wisdom and knowledge fail. So in Fiji, after so many years of, should I say, dictatorship or dictatorial rule, as a new government, our Prime Minister, Mr. Rumbuka, and myself and others, we believe that to change our development path, our development pattern, we need to change the style of governance. And that style, that philosophy, is deeply rooted in what we are doing now. We believe in a consultative, dialogue-based approach towards policy making. So the first thing we did as as a government was to bring the country together. We had a big national economic summit after 16 years. We brought a diverse group of people. There was a lot of passion, energy, drive to think through our problems as a country. And we produced outcomes that is now feeding into our economic policy. We appointed a fiscal review committee which looked at how governments do things in terms of their tax policy. I know there is a big debate about GST and zero rated. We had that debate during the formulation of our budget, which I presented in July, and that budget has now been passed. The important thing that I want to make is that it has galvanized, those actions have galvanized a sense of confidence, a sense of freedom, and might I say a little bit of exuberance in the way in which people feel about the country. And we've made good of that by making sure that we repeal. So the first thing we did was to repeal the draconian media decree. And seasoned journalists like Rachna Nath and Rachel, they understand the environment in which they were working in Fiji. And so fundamentally, what we have done is to open the country to freedom. There is no fear anymore. We can see that. The way in which people can talk to the politicians, the way in which the media can ask questions to us, it's very, very different. We put out a budget to do three things. Of course, we inherited a huge debt, partly as a result of COVID, but the problem was worse even before COVID. COVID made it worse. We benefited from the support from New Zealand, from Australia, and other development partners, particularly Australia and New Zealand, in terms of budget support. So essentially, the budget that we just passed a month ago is to stabilize our finances. We have reduced the deficit to about 4.8% from an average of 9% over the last several years. We had to take some revenue measures to bring in permanent income, but we are also making sure that we look after our people. So we have increased social welfare rates, put in more money into health, education. We've written off the huge debt that students had built up over the last 8 or 9 years. And so we're providing scholarships. The economy has rebounded very, very strongly. We have just revised our growth rate from about 6% to a conservative 8%. In fact, we might go higher than that. Our tourism recovery is very, very strong. We have already surpassed the pre-COVID level of 2019. We are advocating now, in my last speech at the University of the South Pacific during the Forum Economic Ministers meeting, which was held 2 weeks ago, and for the first time on the agenda was this deep, meaningful regional integration. Of course, we understand the imperatives of labor shortage in Australia and New Zealand, We have a huge inflow of remittances as well, surpassing $1 billion last year. We expect about 1.2, 1.3 billion this year, keeping our consumption very, very strong. And the other point that I want to make, which would be of interest to many of you, is the level of international engagement since the new government came in has been very, very strong. Of course, as a government, we have said very clearly that we want to re-engage more meaningfully, deeply with our traditional partners, partners who believe in democracy, the rule of law, human rights, transparency, accountability, on level, whether it's with the US, whether it's with India, Australia, New Zealand, the Indo-Pacific strategy, the Quad group. There is heightened interest in what Fiji does, or what Fiji says. Of course, there are always controversies. Governments don't always do everything right. And as a government, we have said that when we make mistakes, we will say so. Because that's what helps democracy. That's what strengthens democracy. And so there is I know I'm painting a very rosy picture. It is a rosy picture. It's a reality I'm talking about. Notwithstanding that, we have some serious problems. We have to deal with a huge infrastructure deficit. We were landed with a health service delivery status which was probably the worst ever in the history of Fiji. And so we are increasing our efforts to ensure that we improve our health services. As I said, we are concentrating on education, diversifying our economy. We have put in more money into agriculture, making sure that our vulnerable communities are helped. But a more bigger and determined agenda is for us to fix some of these big problems. It will not be done tomorrow, but we want to do as much as we can in the 4 years or 3 years, some months left for us in our first term. But let me just say, thank you to all of you. I can't help but keep thanking our people, our diaspora, our friends in all the countries, Australia, New Zealand, US, Canada, anywhere that our people are, for chipping in, helping your families and friends and communities. During COVID, I know for now community itself was greatly involved in helping people during COVID. And we saw the effectiveness and the efficiency with which communities outside of government were able to help our people. And I want to just commend all of you, this community here, for creating such infrastructure, because these are models of development that can be advocated anywhere in any country. One last point before Rachel said a few words. When you give a floor to a politician, combine that with a former professor or academic, it's a bad combination.
Very interesting. Very
but let me just say that we are very pleased as a government that we have a very strong engagement with our diaspora. We're going to change the regulations where we'll allow former Fiji citizens and their descendants, even if you don't have a passport. Right now, when you go, you get a 3 months permit. Very soon, when the regulations are changed, you will not need them. We are also thinking of substantially reducing the cost of getting your passport back in Fiji, if you want one, so that we make it more efficient and easier for our people to come back. And finally, I invite all of you to visit Fiji. The country is getting more beautiful, and it is absolutely on a path of phenomenal
Rugby World Cup.
Growth. Rugby World Cup. We
Beat England.
nobody believed that Fiji would defeat England. And we are anticipating a path to the ultimate. But thank you, Nava Levu, and it's great to be here and to see all of you. As I said, I am here to speak at the Fiji New Zealand Business Council. I'll be saying some interesting things tomorrow, so I'm sure Rachel and Rachna and others would be interested in them. Thank you.